All right, so this video is going to go over how to write an equation in factored form from a graph. Now, the nice thing is the first step is the same as our previous ones where we were going to write our equations in standard form. The first thing you want to do is identify your zeros. And your zeros are the x values when y equals 0. So basically, it's where it crosses the x-axis. Looking at this first example with the graph, it crosses the x-axis 3 times. So we are going to have 3 zeros that we're working with. One was at -2, -1, and then +2. Our second step, just like before, after we identify the zeros, we're going to set up our equation. Now, you'll notice in the directions of this one, it does not tell us anything about our leading coefficient. So when we're going to write it in factored form, what you are looking for is your a value. So that means when you write your equation, you are going to have that variable a in there. We don't know what that is, but the rest is going to be the exact same. We know our zeros, so we're going to put in the zeros. Remember, they're the opposite signs, so we would have x plus 2, x plus 1, and x minus 2. After you set up your equation, you are going to find the extra point, and you are going to plug it into your equation. So I'll put extra point substitution. So if we look, there's 1 point in our graph that is not on the x-axis. That is our extra point. So that extra point was at 0, -4. That's what we're going to plug in for x and y so that we can solve for our a value. Now, the important thing is that this is asking you to write a function. So your final answer needs to be an equation. And a lot of people forget to write that equation at the end of the problem. So one thing that I recommend is before you even start solving for a, is rewrite your equation at the bottom, leaving a space for your a value. That way, when you find a, you'll remember to plug it into your final answer, which is the original equation. All right, so now we can plug this in. So for x, we're going to put 0, y, we're going to put -4. So we have -4 equals, we don't know what a is, and then our x, we're plugging in 0. All right, once you plug in that extra point, you are going to solve for a. So the first few steps are very similar to the previous one. We're just solving a little bit different. When you are solving, remember all of these parentheses are being multiplied together times our variable a. So we're going to first add or subtract in the parentheses. So 0 plus 2 is 2, 0 plus 1 is 1, and 0 minus 2 is -2. Then you are going to multiply all of these parentheses together. That becomes our coefficient of a. So 2 times 1 times -2 would be -4 times our a value. And we want a by itself, so we'll divide by -4, which gives us a +1 equals a. Now remember, finding a is not your last step. You have to then write your equation. So our a value is 1, you plug that in, and then this is your answer at the bottom. All right, so I'd recommend pausing and doing example 5, and then once you get your answer, you can skip to the end of the video to see if you did it correctly. All right, so our first step is to identify our zeros. So for this one, it's where it crosses the x-axis, just like before. We will have one at -2, -1, and +1. And my extra point here is 0, 4. Okay. Once I know that, I'm going to set up my equation. So I have y equals a, because I don't know my a value, x plus 2, x plus 1, and then x minus 1. And I'm going to write it again at the bottom so I don't forget to fill in my final answer. Once I have that, then I can start solving for a. So I'm going to take my extra point and plug in these numbers for x and y. So y equals 4 and x is going to equal 0. Now that's not always going to be the case. For these two examples, yes, x equals 0, but there will be other numbers that you will need to plug in. So make sure you're not just automatically putting in 0. Okay, once you plug those in, then you're going to simplify all of the parentheses. So 0 plus 2 is 2, 0 plus 1 is 1, and 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Then I will multiply all of these together, and that will give me a negative 2a. Then when we divide by negative 2, we get negative 2 equals a. And don't forget, your final answer is plugging that into your equation. That is an easy point to get just by plugging it in. If you don't plug it into your final equation, you will get a minus 1 because you didn't finish the problem. Okay, if you have any questions on this part, make sure you reach out. The next one will be going over how to write an equation just given points and not the graph.